They called her the incompetent nurse and humiliated her daily, the quiet, middle-aged woman who changed bedsheets and cleaned vomit. But when a young Marine's heart stopped beating and the arrogant doctor froze in panic, she dropped the submission, grabbed the scalpel, and opened the soldier's chest with the surgical precision of someone who has operated under enemy fire. In seconds, everyone realized this wasn't a trembling nurse. This was a ghost returning from war. And now, with security cameras revealing her face to the world, the woman who spent 3 years hiding who she really is will have to face the past that turned her into the most feared legend of the battlefields. If you've ever felt underestimated or invisible, this story will remind you why silence can be the deadliest weapon. Hit that like button and let's dive in. The blood hit the floor in a rhythm Emma Cole recognized instantly. Arterial spray, femoral most likely, 60 seconds until consciousness fades, 3 minutes until brain damage. Her hands, which had been trembling moments ago while a drunk patient screamed obscenities at her, went perfectly still. She was mopping the corridor outside Trauma Bay 2 when the doors burst open and the chaos spilled out. "Someone grab that bleeder!" Dr. Marcus Brennan shouted, his voice cracking with panic. The 34-year-old chief resident stood frozen over a gurney, his perfectly styled dark hair now speckled with arterial blood. His white coat splattered crimson. On the gurney lay a construction worker whose leg had been partially severed by industrial equipment. The makeshift tourniquet the paramedics had applied was failing, red pulsing through the gauze like a metronome counting down to death. Emma's gray-blue eyes tracked the spray pattern on the ceiling tiles. 12 feet, high velocity, complete arterial transection. She calculated the blood loss in her head, while her hands continued the mechanical motion of mopping, back and forth, invisible labor by an invisible woman. "Brennan, clamp it." Dr. Sarah Chen, the attending, was elbow deep in another patient's abdomen 3 bays down, unable to assist. "Apply direct pressure above the knee." "I am applying pressure." Brennan's hands were shaking so badly he could barely maintain his grip. The young resident beside him, Dr. Patel, looked ready to vomit. "It's not working. We're losing him." Emma's dirty blonde ponytail, messy and secured with a basic elastic band, didn't move as she tilted her head slightly. She could see the problem from 15 feet away. Brennan was pressing on the wrong anatomical landmark, missing the femoral artery by nearly 2 inches. Amateur mistake. Fatal mistake. Her 5'4" frame, hidden beneath medium blue scrubs that hung like a tent on her compact, muscular body, remained hunched in the submissive posture she'd perfected over 18 months of hiding. She wore the oversized scrubs deliberately, the V-neck top and baggy pants concealing every line of her athletic build. Her hospital ID badge swung from a basic lanyard around her neck. Emma Cole, RN, float pool. "Cole!" Brennan spotted her in the hallway. "Don't just stand there mopping. Get me more lap pads. Move." Emma's hands, which bore multiple small shrapnel scars across the backs, usually unnoticed by anyone who wasn't looking closely, tightened on the mop handle. She watched the patient's blood pressure on the monitor drop. 70/40, then 65/38. "Someone page vascular!" Brennan screamed. "Where the hell is vascular?" "In surgery," a nurse called back. "They're 40 minutes out minimum." The patient didn't have 40 minutes. He had maybe 3. Emma set down the mop. Her body language shifted for just a fraction of a second, shoulders pulling back, center of gravity lowering, head rising, before she forced herself back into the submissive hunch. "Not yet. Not unless there's no other choice." "Dr. Brennan," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "You need to move your hand 2 inches medial and apply pressure against the pelvic bone, not the muscle." Brennan didn't even look at her. "I know where the femoral artery is, Cole. I went to Johns Hopkins. Where did you go, community college?" He pressed harder in the same wrong location. The bleeding intensified. The patient's eyes rolled back. The monitor alarm changed pitch. A sound Emma knew too well, the sound of a heart giving up. She took 1 step closer to the trauma bay door, then another. Her hands had stopped trembling entirely now. They hung loose at her sides, ready, waiting. The thin scar above her left eyebrow, partially hidden by loose strands of hair that had escaped her ponytail, seemed to pulse with muscle memory. "Pressure's dropping," the monitoring nurse shouted. "BP 55/30, we're losing him." Emma's jaw clenched. In her mind, she was no longer in Cedar Valley Memorial Hospital in suburban Portland. She was in a field hospital in Helmand Province, covered in dust and blood, operating on a 19-year-old rifleman while rockets screamed overhead. She remembered the weight of responsibility, the terrible clarity that came with being the only thing standing between a soldier and death. Not yet, she told herself. Let them try. Let them fail first. Stay invisible. But her feet carried her to the trauma bay entrance anyway. "Dr. Brennan," she said again, louder this time, with respect. "You're compressing the wrong—" "Get out!" Brennan roared, finally looking at her. His face was flushed red, sweat dripping down his temples, fear and ego wrestling for dominance. "You don't tell me how to do my job. You're a goddamn nurse. Your job is to fetch supplies and shut up." The patient's monitor flatlined. The sound cut through the chaos like a blade, the horrible, endless tone that meant a heart had stopped fighting. "No pulse!" Patel screamed. "He's coding! Start compressions!" Brennan stumbled back from the gurney, his bloodied gloves held up like surrender. "Someone start CPR!" Emma watched a young nurse barely out of orientation. Climb onto the gurney and begin chest compressions. But with every compression, more blood pumped out of the severed femoral artery, pooling on the floor, splashing onto the walls. You can't compress life into a body that's bleeding out faster than you can pump. 30 seconds of compressions. The monitor stayed flat. 60 seconds. Still flat. "Epi!" Brennan shouted. "Push, Epi! Charge the defibrillator!" "You can't shock a flatline," Emma whispered to herself. Basic ACLS. First week medical knowledge. 90 seconds. The patient's face had gone from pale to gray to a bluish white. Emma closed her eyes. She saw other faces. Young faces. Soldiers who died because she hadn't been fast enough, skilled enough, brave enough. She'd walked away from medicine because she couldn't save them all, couldn't carry the weight of all that death. But this one, this construction worker with a wife and 3 kids waiting in the lobby, this one she could save. If she stayed invisible, he would die. If she acted, her invisibility would shatter forever. The decision took less than a heartbeat. Emma Cole shoved the trauma bay door open with enough force that it banged against the wall. Every head turned. The submissive hunch was gone. Her shoulders were back, her spine straight. She seemed to grow 3 inches in height, her gray-blue eyes, which had spent 18 months staring at floors, now scanned the room with the tactical precision of a battlefield assessment. "Move," she said. Not loud, not a shout, but the command in her voice was absolute. The young nurse doing compressions hesitated. "I said move!" Emma's voice cracked like a whip. The nurse scrambled off the gurney. Emma stepped to the bedside. Her hands, which had been trembling when she mopped the floor, were now perfectly steady. She looked at the femoral wound, then at Brennan. "Clamp," she said, holding out her hand. "You don't have authority to—" Brennan started. "Clamp. Now." Emma's eyes locked onto his. There was something in that gaze that made the arrogant resident take a step back. Something cold. Something that had seen death up close and refused to blink. Dr. Patel, hands shaking, placed a large Kelly clamp in Emma's palm. Emma didn't hesitate. She plunged her hand directly into the wound, her fingers finding the retracted, severed femoral artery by touch alone. She pulled it out of the muscle, visualized the anatomy in her mind, a 3-dimensional map she'd memorized in combat zones, and clamped it with perfect precision. The arterial spray stopped instantly. "Pressure's rising," the monitor nurse whispered in shock. 60/35. 70/40. Emma grabbed a second clamp with her free hand and secured the distal end of the artery. Then she looked at the crash cart. 2 units O negative. Pressure bag. Wide open IV access. Move. The staff moved. Not because she was a nurse, because she had become something else entirely. "We still don't have a pulse," Brennan said weakly. Trying to reassert control, Emma looked at the monitor. Pulseless electrical activity. The heart was trying to beat but couldn't generate pressure because there was no blood volume left to pump. "He needs blood before we can circulate," Emma said. She kept one hand on the clamps, maintaining pressure. "And he needs internal compression on the aorta to redirect flow to the brain. That requires opening the chest," Dr. Chen's voice came from the doorway. The attending had abandoned her other patient to see what the commotion was about. She stared at the scene. Emma Cole, the quiet float nurse, elbow deep in a femoral wound. Blood soaked to the elbows, giving orders like a trauma surgeon. "Yes," Emma said simply, meeting the attending's eyes. "It does." "You can't," Chen started. "Watch me," Emma said. And then, from outside, cutting through the tension like a knife, the unmistakable sound of helicopter rotors. Close, getting closer. Emma's head snapped toward the window. Her entire body went rigid. That sound, that particular rhythm, not a medical helicopter, military. Her gray-blue eyes widened. The scar above her eyebrow seemed to pulse. "Medevac inbound," someone shouted from the ambulance bay. "ETA 2 minutes. Multiple casualties. They're saying GSWs and blast injuries." Gunshot wounds, blast injuries, combat casualties. Coming here, to her hospital, to her hiding place. Emma's hand stayed steady on the clamps, but something in her expression changed. The carefully constructed mask of Emma Cole, invisible nurse, cracked just a little bit more. Dr. Chen was staring at her. "Cole, how did you know how to do that?" Emma didn't answer. She was listening to the helicopters, counting them. 2 birds, maybe 3. Multiple casualties meant a full trauma team response. It meant military personnel. It meant people who might recognize her. The construction worker gasped. A real breath. His eyes fluttered. "We have a pulse," the monitor nurse shouted. "Sinus rhythm, BP 85/50. Emma released the clamps carefully, watching for rebleeding. The vessel held. She stepped back, her hands dripping red, and looked at the team. "Get him to the OR now," she said quietly. "He needs vascular repair within the hour." As they rushed the gurney toward the elevators, Dr. Brennan stood in the corner. His face pale, his perfect image shattered. Dr. Chen stepped in front of Emma, blocking her path to the door. "Who are you?" Chen asked softly. Emma looked down at her blood-soaked scrubs, at her steady, scarred hands, at the life she'd just saved with skills no float pool nurse should possess. The helicopter rotors were directly overhead now, the building vibrating with their presence. "Nobody," Emma whispered. "I'm nobody." But they both knew that was a lie. And in approximately 90 seconds, when those military casualties came through the door, Emma Cole's carefully constructed invisibility was about to shatter completely. The double doors of the ambulance bay exploded inward before Emma could escape. The helicopter wash had barely settled when 4 Navy corpsmen burst through, pushing 2 gurneys simultaneously. The noise was overwhelming. Radio chatter, rotor wash still echoing. Shouted medical terminology that made Emma's blood run cold because she understood every word. "Trauma 1 and 2, Dr. Chen shouted, her earlier suspicion about Emma momentarily forgotten in the chaos. "What do we have?" The lead corpsman, a muscular black man with a combat medic patch on his sleeve, didn't break stride. "2 urgent surgical. Patient 1, GSW to the upper right quadrant, entry and exit, significant hepatic involvement. Patient 2, blast fragmentation injuries, suspected hemothorax, decreased breath sounds left side." Emma had pressed herself against the wall near the supply room, her head down, ponytail obscuring her face. "Stay invisible. Let them handle it. Walk away." But her eyes tracked the gurneys anyway. Training she couldn't unlearn. The first patient, the GSW, was a male in his late 20s, wearing the tattered remains of a desert camouflage uniform. His face was covered in dust and dried blood, but his patches were visible. NavySEAL trident. the gold eagle and anchor and pistol that marked him as one of the elite. The second patient was younger, maybe 24, his chest wrapped in combat gauze that was already soaking through. His breathing was rapid and shallow. Tachypneic, the telltale sign of a collapsed lung stealing oxygen with every failed breath. Get them on the tables. Doctor. Brennan had recovered some of his composure, though his hands still trembled slightly. Chest x-ray stat, type and cross for 6 units each. No time for x-rays, the corpsman interrupted. Patient 2 is getting worse. We did a needle decompression in the bird, but it reaccumulated. He needs a chest tube now. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She knew that presentation. Tension pneumothorax that had been temporarily relieved but was building pressure again. The mediastinal shift would crush his heart and great vessels if they didn't decompress immediately. I'll place the tube, Brennan announced, snapping on gloves. Patel, set up the tray. Set up the... Emma watched from her corner as Brennan approached the second gurney. The young SEAL's lips were turning blue. His jugular veins were distended, bulging against the skin of his neck. Classic signs. But Brennan was moving too slowly, talking too much. Explaining the procedure to his residents like this was a teaching case, and not a life slipping away. Behind the corpsman, 3 more figures entered. These weren't medics, these were operators. Emma recognized the walk before she even looked at their faces, the way they moved, scanning corners, assessing threats, positioning themselves with tactical precision even in a hospital. They wore civilian clothes, jeans and tactical boots and concealed carry jackets, but their haircuts and bearings screamed military. The tallest one, a white man in his early 40s with a red-brown beard and a sleeve of tattoos visible beneath his pushed-up sleeves, stepped forward. His eyes swept the trauma bay and locked immediately onto Emma. She looked away too fast. Tactical mistake. Someone trained would notice that avoidance. Doctor, the bearded man addressed Brennan, his voice carrying the gravel of 1,000 briefings. That's Petty Officer Raines. He took shrapnel saving my life 30 minutes ago. You take care of him. It wasn't a request. Brennan bristled at being given orders. I'm doing everything I can. Now if you'll step back and let me work. SAT's dropping, a nurse called out. 85%. 82. Emma's eyes snapped to the monitor. The oxygen saturation was plummeting. Brennan hadn't even started the chest tube procedure yet. He was still prepping the sterile field, moving with textbook precision, but no urgency. The bearded SEAL's jaw tightened. Doc, his lips are turning purple. I'm aware, Brennan said tersely. Patel, hand me the monitor alarm screamed. Oxygen saturation, 78%. Emma took 1 step forward, then stopped. Her pulse was hammering. The scar above her eyebrow throbbed with phantom pain. She'd sworn 18 months ago she was done. Done with the blood, the pressure, the impossible choices. But that SEAL on the table was 24 years old. The same age as Corporal Matthews, who died in her arms in Helmand because the medevac took 12 minutes instead of 10. She took another step. Dr. Chen noticed. Cole, we don't need... 5th intercostal space, mid-axillary line, Emma said quietly, her eyes fixed on the young SEAL. 1% lidocaine if you have time. You don't have time. Scalpel, Kelly clamp, 32 French chest tube. Brennan spun around. Excuse me? I know the anatomy. Then do it faster, Emma said. Her voice had changed again. The apologetic softness was gone. His trachea is deviating. You have maybe 90 seconds before his heart stops. The bearded SEAL's eyes narrowed, studying Emma with the intensity of a threat assessment. She could feel his gaze taking in details. Her posture, her hands. The way she was reading the monitor without looking at it. Who's that? He asked Chen. A nurse, Chen said uncertainly. Bullshit, the SEAL said flatly. Brennan made the incision. Too shallow, too hesitant. The young SEAL's oxygen saturation hit 74%. Emma couldn't watch anymore. She crossed the distance to the trauma bay in 4 strides, her compact frame moving with a predatory efficiency that made staff members step aside instinctively. She didn't ask permission. She grabbed a fresh Kelly clamp from the tray, shouldered Brennan out of the way, actually made him stumble backward, and plunged the clamp into the incision. "What the hell?" Brennan started. Emma spread the intercostal muscles with one smooth motion, creating a tunnel between the ribs. Then she took the chest tube from the tray and advanced it into the thoracic cavity with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 100 times in worse conditions. There was a rushing hiss of air as the trapped pressure released. The young SEAL gasped, his chest expanding properly for the first time in minutes. The oxygen saturation began to climb. 78. 82. 88. Emma secured the tube with rapid sutures, her hands moving in a blur. The shrapnel scars on the backs of her hands caught the overhead light. She didn't notice. She was counting respirations, watching the chest rise and fall, ensuring equal expansion. "Sat's 94%, the monitoring nurse whispered. "Respiration's normalizing." Emma stepped back. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She'd just exposed herself. Again. Twice in 1 hour. The bearded SEAL was staring at her. His eyes had widened slightly, recognition dawning in his expression like a sunrise. "Oh my God," he breathed. "Valkyrie?" Emma's blood turned to ice. That name, that call sign, she hadn't heard it spoken aloud in 18 months. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I think you're confused. I'm just a nurse." The SEAL took a step closer. He was massive, at least 6'4", and his presence filled the room. But he wasn't threatening. His expression was a mixture of shock and something that looked almost like reverence. "The suture pattern," he said, pointing at the chest tube. "That's a modified Lambert stitch. I've only seen one person use that variation. And the way you place that tube without even looking at anatomical landmarks." He shook his head slowly. "You operated on me 6 years ago. Kandahar. IED blast took half my team. You were covered in blood and you had this tiny scar above your eyebrow, and you told me to stop being a baby because you'd had worse paper cuts." Emma's throat went dry. She remembered. A convoy ambush. 3 SEALs critically wounded. She'd operated for 14 hours straight in a sandstorm with failing generators. "That wasn't me," Emma said, but her voice cracked. "You're mistaken. Lieutenant Colonel Stratton," the SEAL said quietly. "Call sign Valkyrie. You were a legend. They said you disappeared after—" He stopped, noticing her expression, the way she'd gone pale. "Ma'am, what are you doing working as a nurse in Portland?" The entire trauma bay had gone silent. Dr. Chen, Dr. Brennan, the staff, everyone was staring. "Cole," Chen said slowly, "is this true? Are you a doctor?" Before Emma could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "Where's my son?" A man in a Navy dress uniform stepped into the trauma bay. He wore the eagles of a Navy captain, his chest covered in ribbons that told a story of decades of service. His face was creased with worry. The bearded SEAL straightened immediately. "Captain Rains, sir. Your son is stable." This woman just saved his life. Captain Rains looked at Emma, really looked at her. His eyes traveled from her dirty blonde ponytail to her blood-stained scrubs to her hands, still slightly raised from the procedure. His face went white. "Dr. Stratton," he whispered. "Is that you?" Emma closed her eyes. 2 people. 2 recognitions. Her cover was completely blown. "I treated you too," she said quietly, looking at Captain Rains. "Helmand Province, 2021. Gunshot wound to the abdomen. I remember because you kept trying to give orders from the operating table." Rains let out a shocked laugh. "You told me to shut up or you'd put me under yourself." He looked at the bearded SEAL, then at his son, then back at Emma. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Hiding," Emma said simply. Dr. Brennan had recovered enough to be angry. "This is insane. She's impersonating a nurse. She's committed fraud. She's a board-certified trauma surgeon with more combat experience than every doctor in this hospital combined." Captain Rains interrupted coldly. "And she just saved my son's life while you were fumbling with a chest tube tray." "I'm calling security," Brennan said. "You do that," the bearded SEAL said. His hand moved subtly toward his concealed carry. "And I'll call Jag. Let's see who gets here first." Emma looked at the door. She could run, disappear again, change her name, move to another city, another state. But as she looked at the young SEAL on the table, breathing easily now, she knew it was too late. The ghost had been seen, and ghosts can't hide in the light. The hospital administrator's office had become a war room. Emma sat in a chair designed for comfort, but felt like an interrogation seat, her blood-crusted hands folded in her lap. She hadn't been allowed to change out of her scrubs. Evidence, they'd called it. Of what crime? Nobody seemed certain yet. Across the heavy oak desk sat Gerald Morrison, the hospital's CEO. A man whose greatest trauma was probably a disputed insurance claim. To his left, the hospital's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Valdez, tapped her pen against a legal pad. To his right, Dr. Marcus Brennan sat with his arms crossed, looking vindicated and furious in equal measure. Standing against the wall, refusing to sit, was the bearded SEAL. He'd identified himself as Chief Petty Officer Derek "Havoc" Morrison, no relation to the CEO, and he'd made it clear he wasn't leaving. "Let me make sure I understand," Gerald Morrison said, his voice dripping with corporate concern that masked legal panic. "You've been working here for 6 months under the credentials of a registered nurse, but you're actually—" He consulted a paper. "A former lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Medical Corps with a specialty in trauma surgery?" "Former," Emma said quietly. "I resigned my commission 18 months ago. But you didn't resign your medical license." Attorney Valdez interjected. "I checked. Your license is still active in multiple states, including Oregon. So technically, you're a physician working as a nurse, which isn't illegal. Unusual, but not illegal." Brennan leaned forward. "She performed 2 invasive procedures without authorization. She assaulted me, actually pushed me out of the way, and she violated patient consent protocols." "Patient consent?" Chief Morrison, Havoc, spoke up, his voice dangerously quiet. "My teammate was dying. She got consent from me, his team leader. That's how it works in combat medicine. The ranking member present makes the call." "This isn't combat," Brennan snapped. "This is a civilian hospital with rules and a dead construction worker if she hadn't intervened," Havoc interrupted, "and a dead SEAL if she hadn't placed that chest tube. How many people did you save today, Dr. Brennan?" The office door opened before Brennan could respond. Dr. Sarah Chen entered, carrying a tablet. She looked exhausted, her surgical cap still on, her face grave. "The GSW patient just came out of surgery," Chen announced. "The hepatic trauma was worse than we thought. Grade 4 laceration. He lost 4 liters of blood on the table." She looked at Emma. "He's stable now. Critical but stable." Morrison, the CEO, cleared his throat. "That's excellent news, but it doesn't change—" "I'm not finished," Chen said, her voice sharp. She held up the tablet. "I pulled the security footage from the trauma bay. The timestamps are very interesting." She turned the tablet to face the room. The video showed Emma's intervention with the construction worker, but Chen had annotated it with medical notes. "From the moment she clamped the femoral artery to the moment we had a viable pulse was 4 minutes and 32 seconds, Chen narrated. The vascular surgeon reviewed the footage. He said the technique she used, blind clamping in a shredded vessel, is something he wouldn't attempt without direct visualization. The failure rate is over 70%, but she did it perfectly. She swiped to the next video. The chest tube placement. Petty Officer Rain's oxygen saturation was at 74% when she intervened. Dr. Brennan, you were still preparing your sterile field. The medical literature says that at that saturation level, with the tracheal deviation visible on the footage, the patient had approximately 2 minutes before cardiac arrest. Chen looked directly at Brennan. She placed that tube in 45 seconds. I timed it. The room went silent. "So, what are you saying?" Attorney Valdez asked carefully. "I'm saying that Dr. Emma Cole, or whatever her real name is, saved 2 lives today using skills that most trauma surgeons don't possess," Chen said. "And I'm saying that if we punish her for it, we're idiots." Brennan shot to his feet. She made me look incompetent. No, Chen said coldly. You made yourself look incompetent. She just showed us what competence looks like. Emma finally spoke. I never meant to practice medicine. I took the nursing job because I thought I could help people without the responsibility of being a surgeon, without making life and death decisions. She looked at her scarred hands. But I can't watch people die when I know I can save them. I tried. I failed. Why did you leave the military? Morrison, the CEO, asked. It was the question everyone wanted answered. Emma was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was distant, as if she were reading someone else's story. Helmand Province, 2023. We were operating a forward surgical team in an area that was supposed to be secure. It wasn't. Insurgents attacked while I was in the middle of a thoracotomy on a 19-year-old rifleman. Rockets, small arms fire, the whole fight. I finished the surgery under fire. Saved the kid. She paused. But while I was operating on him, 3 wounded came in that I couldn't get to. They died waiting. I chose one life and 3 others ended because of that choice. That's combat triage, Havoc said gently. You can't save everyone. I know, Emma said. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. So I left. I thought I could escape the weight of those decisions. Be invisible. Let someone else choose who lives and who dies. But you can't, Chen said softly. Can you? Emma shook her head. Apparently not. The door opened again. This time Captain Rains entered, now in civilian clothes. His face was less strained than before. My son is awake, he said. He asked who saved him. I told him the truth. He looked at Emma. He wants to thank you personally, Dr. Stratton. I'm not a doctor anymore, Emma said automatically. The hell you're not, Rains said, and we both know it. Attorney Valdez tapped her pen again. Legally, this is a minefield. If we acknowledge she's a physician, we open liability questions. If we fire her for misrepresentation, those patients' families could claim we terminated the person who saved their loved ones. If we keep her as a nurse, we're deliberately underutilizing a resource. What do you want to do, Dr. Cole? Morrison, the CEO, asked. Or is it Dr. Stratton? Emma looked around the room, at Chen, who'd defended her, at Havoc, who'd recognized her, at Captain Rains, whose son was alive because she couldn't stay hidden. I want to go home, she said honestly. I want to disappear again, but I know that's not an option anymore. No, Chen agreed. It's not. The local news already has the story. Mysterious nurse saves lives with advanced surgical skills. Your face is on 3 different channels. Emma closed her eyes. Of course it is. So here's what's going to happen, Morrison said, making a decision. Officially, we're conducting an internal review. Unofficially, Dr. Chen is going to recommend that we hire you as an attending trauma surgeon. Full credentials, full privileges. I don't, Emma started. You don't have a choice, Morrison interrupted. Because if you walk out of here, every news outlet in the country is going to hunt you down to ask why a decorated military surgeon is hiding as a nurse. You'll never have peace. But if you stay here, work here legitimately, we can control the narrative. War hero returns to medicine. Feel-good story. Done. It was a trap wrapped in an opportunity, but Emma recognized the truth in it. And Dr. Brennan? She asked. Brennan's face was red. I'm the chief resident. I'm not working under her. You're right, Chen said. You're not. You're transferring to radiology. Effective immediately. You can't. I can, Morrison said. And I am. You nearly killed 2 patients today through hesitation and ego. Dr. Stratton saved them through skill and courage. You're a liability. She's an asset. Brennan looked like he wanted to argue, but Valdez was already sliding a transfer document across the desk. Sign, Valdez said. Or we review every case you've touched in the past year. Your choice. Brennan signed. He left the room without looking at Emma. Havoc chuckled darkly. That's what we call getting smoked, Doc. Emma couldn't smile. What about the other patients from the helicopter? The GSW? Staff Sergeant Marcus Torres, Havoc said. He's in the ICU. Touch and go. They're watching for sepsis. I want to see him, Emma said. You're not assigned to... Morrison started. I want to see him, Emma repeated, standing up. The submission was completely gone from her posture now. She was 5'4", but she seemed to fill the room. He's a combat casualty. That makes him my responsibility. Chen smiled. Welcome back to medicine, Dr. Stratton. As Emma walked toward the door, Captain Rains stopped her. The reason we were in that helicopter, he said quietly, is because we were extracting from a situation that went sideways. Torres took a round meant for me. We got him out, but the local trauma center couldn't handle the damage. We diverted here as a last resort. He met her eyes. You were supposed to be in hiding. We were supposed to be in Virginia. What are the odds? I don't believe in fate, Emma said. Neither did I, Rains replied. Until today. Emma left the office and walked toward the ICU. Staff members stared as she passed, whispers following her like a wake. She didn't care anymore. The mask was off. The ghost was visible, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this was only the beginning, because people who recognized her would start asking questions, and some of those questions would lead to answers she'd spent 18 months running from. The ICU was a cathedral of beeping monitors and hushed voices. Emma stood outside Staff Sergeant Marcus Torres's room, reading his chart on the tablet a nurse had reluctantly handed her. The damage was extensive. Through and through GSW, right upper quadrant, hepatic laceration repaired but tenuous, significant blood loss. Ongoing transfusion protocol. His vitals were stable but fragile, like a house of cards in a gentle breeze. She was about to enter when her phone buzzed. Not her regular phone, the burner she kept for emergencies, the one only 3 people in the world had the number for. The screen showed a blocked number. Emma's hand went still. She stepped into an empty supply closet and answered. Valkyrie. The voice on the other end was familiar, gravelly, with the weight of command behind it. General Thomas Miller, her former commanding officer. That's not my call sign anymore, sir, Emma said quietly. Cut the bullshit, Emma. Your face is all over the news. Mystery nurse performs battlefield surgery in Oregon hospital. I had CNN playing in my office when I recognized you. Do you have any idea what you've done? Emma leaned against the supply shelves. I saved 2 lives, sir. You exposed yourself, Miller snapped. We spent considerable resources making you disappear after Helmand. We buried your identity, your records, everything. You were supposed to stay hidden. I didn't ask for that protection, Emma said. I resigned. I wanted to leave it all behind. You can't leave it behind when you're a witness to a war crime, Colonel. Miller's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. The Helmand incident. The orphanage. You testified at the classified tribunal. The contractors you identified are still out there, and they have long memories and deep pockets. Emma's blood went cold. The orphanage. She'd spent 18 months trying not to think about it. The night insurgents allegedly attacked a civilian building. The night she'd arrived to find 37 dead children, and evidence that contradicted the official story. The night she'd discovered American contractors had fired on the building to cover up an arms deal gone wrong. She'd testified. 3 contractors were dishonorably discharged. Their company, Blackwell Solutions, lost a $1 billion Pentagon contract. But the company executives had never been prosecuted. They'd walked away with their fortunes intact and their reputations destroyed by her testimony. Sir, that was 2 years ago, Emma said. Why would they? Because yesterday the Department of Justice reopened the case, Miller interrupted. New evidence. Financial records. They're going after the Blackwell executives for war crimes, and you're the star witness. Again. Emma's hand started to shake. I'm out. I told the JAG lawyers I was done. You don't get to be done, Emma. Not when... Miller stopped mid-sentence. Hold on, I'm getting another call. Don't hang up. The line went silent. Emma counted her heartbeats. 30 seconds. 60. Miller came back on. His voice had changed. Emma, where exactly are you right now? Cedar Valley Memorial, Portland. Why? Get out. Right now. Don't go to your apartment. Don't go anywhere predictable. I'm scrambling a security team, but they're 40 minutes out. Sir, what's happening? Blackwell knows you surfaced. We just intercepted chatter. They're sending a cleanup crew to your location. They're going to make it look like a disgruntled patient or random violence. Emma, they're going to kill you and anyone near you to bury this. The phone went dead. Emma stood frozen for 3 seconds. Then her training kicked in. She shoved the phone in her pocket and opened the supply closet door carefully, scanning the corridor. Normal activity, nurses at their stations, a janitor mopping. Nothing suspicious. But trained killers wouldn't look suspicious. They'd look like hospital visitors, maintenance workers, paramedics. She walked quickly to the ICU nurses' station. I need you to lock down this floor. No visitors. Fire doors sealed. Code Silver protocol. The charge nurse, a veteran named Ruth, frowned. Code Silver? That's for armed intruders. Do we have a threat? Yes, Emma said. Trust me. Ruth looked at her blood-stained scrubs, at the intensity in her gray-blue eyes, and reached for the phone. Security! This is ICU. Initiating Code Silver. I need... The lights went out. Not just the overhead lights. Everything. Monitors, computers, the backup generators. The entire floor plunged into darkness, broken only by the emergency exit signs. That's not normal, Ruth whispered. Emma's hand went to her waistband, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. She forced herself to think tactically. The hospital had triple redundant power systems. For everything to fail simultaneously meant someone had physically cut the lines or disabled the breakers. Professional work. Military-grade planning. Get everyone into patient rooms, Emma commanded. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone except me or security with proper ID. What about the patients on ventilators? Ruth asked, panic creeping into her voice. Without power. The vents have battery backup, 30 minutes minimum. Move! Ruth started herding staff. Emma ran to Torres's room. The staff sergeant was unconscious. His ventilator running on battery power, the display glowing green in the darkness. Havoc and another SEAL were standing by the window. We've got a problem, Havoc said, not turning around. He was looking down at the parking lot. 3 white vans just pulled up. Emergency entrance. Men getting out. They're dressed like EMTs, but they're moving wrong. Too tactical, too synchronized. Emma joined him at the window. Even in the dim parking lot lights, she could see it. 6 men, maybe 8, wearing dark blue EMT uniforms. But their body language was all wrong. They moved in a diamond formation, covering angles, communicating with hand signals. Blackwell contractors, Emma said. They're here for me. Why? The other SEAL asked. His name tape read, Nash. Long story. But they'll kill everyone on this floor to get to me and make it look like a mass casualty event. Gas leak, structural failure, something plausible. Havoc pulled a compact Glock from his concealed carry holster. How many you think? First wave, 8 to 10. Second wave will be cleanup and demolition. Maybe another 6. Emma's mind was racing through scenarios. They'll come up the stairwells, not the elevators. 2-man teams. Suppressed weapons. They'll clear room by room. You fought contractors before, Nash observed. I've testified against them, Emma said. Same thing. Havoc handed her a backup pistol from his ankle holster. You know how to use this? Emma checked the chamber, verified the magazine, and tucked it into her waistband. The movement was automatic, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to forget. I qualified expert marksman for 3 years running, but I'm a surgeon, not a shooter. Today you're both, Havoc said. He looked at Torres on the bed. We can't move him. He's too unstable. Then we hold this room, Emma said. She looked around, assessing. ICU rooms are reinforced for infection control. Positive pressure, sealed doors, limited entry points. This is the most defensible position on the floor. What about the other patients? Nash asked. Emma's jaw tightened. The impossible choice. Save one or save many. Ruth is locking down the other rooms. Best we can do is make ourselves the primary target and draw them here. You want to use Torres as bait? Havoc's voice was dangerous. I want to use me as bait, Emma corrected. They're here for me. We make sure I'm visible. They'll commit their forces to this room. Gives everyone else a chance. The door to the ICU swung open. Dr. Chen entered, carrying a flashlight. Emma, what the hell is happening? The generators. Get down! Emma shouted. The window exploded inward, not from gunfire, from a breaching charge. Small, precise, just enough to shatter the glass and create an entry point. A canister tumbled through the broken window, spewing white smoke. Flash bang, Havoc yelled, turning away and covering his ears. The explosion was deafening in the confined space. Emma's vision whited out, her ears ringing. She felt someone grab her arm. Chen. Pulling her behind Torres's bed. Through the smoke and the ringing in her ears, Emma saw shapes moving at the window. Ropes. Tactical descent from the roof. They weren't coming through the stairwells. They were rappelling down the outside of the building. The first contractor came through the window in a smooth combat roll. Submachine gun already raised. He wore a balaclava and tactical vest. No identification, completely anonymous. Havoc didn't hesitate. 2 shots. The contractor went down, but 2 more were already coming through the window. Nash engaged, his movements fluid and trained. The ICU room erupted in gunfire, suppressed weapons making rapid coughing sounds. Muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. Emma grabbed Chen and shoved her into the bathroom. Stay down. Don't come out. She turned back to the fight. A contractor had made it inside, sweeping his weapon toward Havoc. Emma didn't think. She grabbed a metal IV pole and swung it like a baseball bat. Catching the contractor across the back of his head, he stumbled. Havoc finished him with a precise shot. More coming! Nash yelled. He was at the window, firing down at climbers on the ropes. Emma's tactical mind was screaming. They were trapped. The contractors would keep coming, overwhelming them with numbers. And when the shooting stopped, Blackwell would burn the hospital or collapse the floor or create some catastrophic failure that buried the evidence. She needed to change the equation. Havoc! Emma shouted over the gunfire. Can you hold this room for 2 minutes? Where are you going? He yelled back. To cut the head off the snake, Emma said. She grabbed the Glock from her waistband. They're coordinating from somewhere. Command vehicle, probably in the parking lot. I take out their communications. They lose tactical cohesion. That's suicide, Nash said. So is staying here, Emma replied. She looked at Torres, unconscious and vulnerable on the bed. Keep him alive. That's an order. You don't give me orders, ma'am, Havoc said, but he was smiling grimly. But I'll follow that one anyway. Go. Emma ran for the door, keeping low. Behind her, the gunfire intensified. She hit the corridor just as the stairwell door burst open and 2 more contractors emerged. They saw her, raised their weapons. Emma dove into an empty patient room as bullets chewed up the wall behind her. She was trapped on a dark hospital floor with professional killers hunting her, and she'd just volunteered to hunt them back. The surgeon had become a soldier again, whether she wanted to or not. Emma pressed her back against the wall of the patient room, controlling her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow the heart rate, think. 2 contractors in the hallway, both armed with suppressed MP5 submachine guns, standard Blackwell loadout. They'd be wearing soft body armor, level 3A, good against handguns but vulnerable at close range to headshots or pelvic girdle hits. She had a Glock 26 with 1 magazine, 15 rounds, no spare ammo, no backup, no support. But she had something they didn't. She knew this hospital. 6 months of invisible work, memorizing layouts, understanding systems. Emma grabbed the IV pole next to the empty bed and quietly unscrewed the bag hook, creating a weighted metal staff. Then she moved to the medical gas panel on the wall. Every patient room had oxygen, medical air, and vacuum lines. She opened the oxygen valve fully and cracked the seal on the line. letting pure O2 flood the room silently. Then she waited by the door. 30 seconds. The oxygen concentration in the room climbed dangerously high. Any spark would create a fireball. She heard whispered voices in the hallway. Tactical communication. They were coordinating, about to breach her room. Emma took the Glock and fired a single shot through the door at knee height. Not aiming to hit, aiming to provoke. The contractors responded instantly. One kicked the door open while the other provided cover fire. Muzzle flashes in the oxygen-rich environment. The room exploded. Not a massive Hollywood fireball, but a sharp, violent combustion that blew out the door and slammed both contractors backward into the opposite wall. Emma had already moved, diving into the bathroom and covering her head. The sprinkler system activated, raining water down on the corridor. Through the smoke and spray, Emma saw both contractors on the ground, disoriented, ears ringing from the overpressure. She didn't hesitate. She stepped out and fired twice. Precise. Clinical. Both men stopped moving. Emma took one of their MP5s and a spare magazine from a vest. Now she was properly armed. She moved toward the stairwell, every sense heightened. The emergency exit signs cast red shadows. Water from the sprinklers made the floor treacherous. She could hear gunfire from Torres's room. Havoc and Nash still fighting. The stairwell door was propped open. Amateur mistake. Never leave your exit route compromised. Unless it's bait. Emma stopped. Listened. Heard the faint sound of breathing one floor down. They were waiting for her. She smiled grimly. Her dirty blonde ponytail was soaked from the sprinklers hanging heavy against her neck. The scar above her left eyebrow throbbed. She could feel herself transforming, the surgeon receding and something older, harder taking over. Emma grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount. She pulled the pin, then rolled it down the stairwell like a grenade. Shouts of surprise from below. Then she dropped a flashbang, taken from a downed contractor's vest, down after it. The explosion echoed up the stairwell. Emma descended in the chaos, using the railing for speed. She came around the corner to find two contractors blind and disoriented. The MP5 coughed twice. They went down. She kept moving. 4th floor, 3rd floor. Heading for ground level. Her mind was ice cold now, running tactical calculations. Blackwell's command would be in a vehicle with communications equipment. White van, probably. Reinforced. They'd position it near the emergency entrance for quick extraction, but with visibility on the hospital. 2nd floor. She heard voices above her, more contractors entering the stairwell from the roof access. They were realizing their assault was failing, trying to regroup. Emma emerged on the ground floor, moving through the darkened corridors toward the emergency department. Staff were huddled in rooms, hiding. She didn't stop to reassure them. No time. She reached the ambulance bay. Through the glass doors she could see the parking lot. 3 white vans, just as Havoc had spotted. 2 were empty, their crews inside the hospital. The 3rd had its rear doors open. A faint glow from inside. Command vehicle. Emma checked the MP5. 10 rounds left. Not enough for a sustained firefight. She noticed a wheelchair near the entrance. An idea formed, desperate and probably stupid, but it was all she had. Emma positioned herself behind a concrete pillar near the ambulance bay doors. Then she fired 3 rounds into the air, shattering the glass doors. The alarm blared, adding to the chaos. As expected, 2 contractors emerged from the command van, weapons raised, moving to investigate the gunfire. Emma waited until they were halfway across the parking lot. Then she stepped out from behind the pillar. "Blackwell!" she shouted. "I'm the one you want. I'm right here." The contractors froze for a split second, processing. In that second, Emma fired. Not at them, at the ground between them, forcing them to dive for cover behind a parked car. Then she ran. Not away from the van, toward it. The contractors behind the car were trained, but she'd surprised them. They were expecting a defensive target, not an aggressive assault. By the time they repositioned to fire, Emma had covered half the distance. She slid across the wet pavement like a baseball player stealing home, using the rain and her compact size to make herself a difficult target. Bullets sparked off the asphalt where she'd been a second before. Emma came up next to the van's rear bumper. The remaining contractor inside was turning. Raising a pistol, Emma was faster. One shot. He dropped. She vaulted into the van. Inside was a communications setup. Radios, laptops, surveillance feeds showing hospital corridors. A tactical map with their assault plan marked. And sitting in the front passenger seat, coordinating the operation, was a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit, completely incongruous with the violence around him. He turned to look at her, his face a mixture of shock and recognition. "Dr. Stratton," he said calmly, "we could have done this cleanly. You didn't need to make it messy." "Who are you?" Emma demanded, keeping the MP5 trained on him. "Marcus Blackwell, CEO of Blackwell Solutions." He smiled without warmth. "The company you destroyed with your testimony." "You destroyed yourselves when you murdered children," Emma said coldly. "Collateral damage in a complex operational environment," Blackwell said, as if discussing a failed business strategy. "But the Justice Department didn't see it that way. Thanks to you." "So you came here to kill me before the trial," Emma said. "Kill the witness, kill the case." Something like that. Blackwell reached for something in his jacket. Emma's finger tightened on the trigger. "Don't." He slowly pulled out a phone. "It's over, Dr. Stratton. Even if you kill me, I've already won. Look." He showed her the screen. It was a timer, counting down. 38 seconds. "What is that?" Emma asked. "Thermite charges, planted on the hospital's main structural supports. When that timer hits 0, the entire East Wing, including your ICU, collapses. Everyone dies. You, my men, all the witnesses. It'll look like a tragic structural failure during the power outage." He smiled. "And even if you live, you'll be buried in investigations for years. No trial, no testimony, no justice." Emma's mind raced. 35 seconds. Could she find the charges and disable them? No. Impossible. Too many variables. Too little time. But she could do one thing. She grabbed Blackwell by his expensive suit and hauled him out of the van with a strength that surprised him. Her 5'4" frame might be small, but it was compact muscle, honed by years of combat deployments. "What are you?" he started. Emma slammed him face first onto the wet pavement and pressed the MP5 against the back of his head. "Turn it off!" she screamed. "Or I execute you right here and let God sort out your war crimes." "You won't," Blackwell said, his face pressed into the asphalt. "You're a doctor. You save lives. You don't take them." Emma thought about the children in Helmand, the orphanage, the small bodies she'd tried desperately to revive, knowing they were already gone. She thought about Torres, fighting for his life upstairs, about Havoc and Nash defending him, about all the patients and staff in the hospital who had no idea they were about to die. "You're right," Emma said quietly. "I save lives." She pulled the trigger. The shot missed Blackwell's head by an inch, deliberately, the bullet sparking off the pavement next to his ear. The sound was deafening. "But I'm a combat surgeon, Mr. Blackwell. I've operated on terrorists who were still trying to kill me. I've kept enemy combatants alive so they could be interrogated. I am very, very good at causing pain without causing death. Now turn it off." Blackwell's composure finally cracked. His hand trembled as he pulled a remote from his pocket. "Code red abort," he whispered into it. The timer on the phone stopped. 15 seconds remaining. Emma heard sirens, real ones this time. Police, FBI, probably General Miller's promised security team finally arriving. She kept the MP5 on Blackwell as federal vehicles screeched into the parking lot, agents pouring out with weapons drawn. "On the ground! Drop the weapon!" they shouted at her. Emma carefully placed the MP5 down and raised her hands, her scarred fingers spread wide. "Friendly. I'm friendly. The hostile is detained." General Miller himself stepped out of a black SUV, his face grim. He took in the scene. Emma covered in blood and water, Blackwell on the ground, the bodies of contractors scattered across the parking lot. "Jesus Christ, Emma," Miller breathed. "What did you do?" "My job, sir," Emma said simply. "I kept people alive." Miller looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his agents. "Secure Blackwell. Get EOD up to the East Wing to clear those thermite charges. And someone get Dr. Stratton a blanket. She's still on the clock." As agents hauled Blackwell away, Emma walked back toward the hospital. Her legs were shaking now, adrenaline finally ebbing. She made it to the ambulance bay before her knees buckled. Havoc was there, emerging from the hospital with Torres on a gurney, Nash beside him. Both SEALs were bloodied but alive. "You did it," Havoc said, something like awe in his voice. "You crazy, beautiful genius. You actually did it." Emma looked at Torres. His monitors showed stable vitals, still alive, still fighting. "How many contractors in the ICU?" she asked. 5 down, Nash reported. "No casualties on our side. You drew them all out." Emma nodded. Then she threw up on the pavement, her body finally rebelling against the violence. Chen appeared with a wheelchair. "Sit, before you fall." Emma sat. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now. The reality of what she'd done, the men she'd killed, the life she'd reclaimed, crashed over her like a wave. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "I just wanted to hide." "I know," Chen said gently. "But Emma, the world needs surgeons who fight, not just in operating rooms." General Miller approached, his phone to his ear. He hung up and crouched beside Emma. "Blackwell is talking," Miller said. "Full confession in exchange for protective custody. He's giving up the whole network, financials, co-conspirators, everything. The Justice Department says your testimony just became the centerpiece of the biggest war crimes prosecution in a decade." "I don't want to testify," Emma said. "I know," Miller replied. "But you will. Because that's who you are." Emma looked at her hands. Surgeon's hands. Soldier's hands. Killer's hands. Savior's hands. All at once. All the same. "Valkyrie," Havoc said quietly. "The one who chooses who lives and who dies." Emma met his eyes. "I choose they all live," she said. "Every single one. That's my choice." And somewhere in the wreckage and the sirens and the rain, Emma Stratton finally accepted what she'd been running from. She was never just a surgeon. And she was never just a soldier. She was both. Always had been. Always would be. The ghost was gone. The legend remained. The morning sun broke through the gray Portland clouds as Emma stood in Cedar Valley Memorial's conference room, facing an audience she'd never expected. General Miller sat at the head of the table. Captain Rains stood beside his son, who was in a wheelchair but awake and alert. Havoc and Nash flanked the door. Dr. Chen and the hospital CEO occupied the opposite side, and in the corner, connected via secure video feed, was a Justice Department prosecutor. "Dr. Emma Stratton," the prosecutor began, reading from a document. "Former Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Army Medical Corps. Combat deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan. Decorations, Distinguished Service Cross, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart. Specialty, Forward Surgical Team Operations Under Fire. Official status, Retired under medical discharge, PTSD." Emma stood at attention, still wearing borrowed scrubs. Her dirty blonde ponytail finally dry. The scar above her eyebrow visible in the harsh conference room lights. "Unofficial status," the prosecutor continued. "Protected witness in United States versus Blackwell Solutions. Conspiracy to commit war crimes. As of 6 hours ago, your protection status is compromised beyond repair." "I understand," Emma said quietly. "Do you?" General Miller interjected. "Because you just killed 4 contractors, wounded 3 more, and captured the CEO of a defense company on national news. Every camera in that parking lot caught you, Emma. You're not a ghost anymore. You're a headline." "Good," Emma said. The word surprised everyone, including herself. "I'm tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be less than I am." Captain Rains stepped forward. "My son is alive because you stopped pretending. Staff Sergeant Torres is alive. A construction worker who'd bled out is now home with his family. How many more lives are worth your anonymity? Emma looked at young Petty Officer Rains in his wheelchair. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, ma'am, he said with a weak smile. But my dad says you gave me a second chance. I'd like to say thank you properly. He attempted to salute from his wheelchair. Emma returned the salute crisply. At ease, Petty Officer. You earned that second chance yourself. I just provided the maintenance. Havoc laughed. Still got the combat surgeon humor, Doc. Maintenance. I'm stealing that. The hospital CEO cleared his throat. Dr. Stratton, we're prepared to offer you a position as Director of Trauma Services. Full salary, full benefits, and a budget to build the program you think this hospital needs. With one condition, Dr. Chen added. You stay visible, you teach, you share what you know. No more hiding. Emma walked to the window, looking down at the parking lot where she'd fought for her life hours earlier. Federal agents were still processing the scene. Evidence markers everywhere. I became a surgeon to save lives, she said slowly. I went to war because soldiers deserved the best chance at survival. I ran away because I thought I'd lost myself in all the blood and violence. She turned back to the room. But last night I realized something. I didn't lose myself. I found exactly who I am. And who is that? Miller asked. Someone who fights, Emma said simply, with scalpels or bullets or whatever it takes. Someone who chooses that everyone lives, even when it seems impossible. Valkyrie, Havoc said softly. The chooser of the slain. Except you choose they don't stay slain. Emma smiled for the first time in what felt like years. I accept the position. On my terms. I run the trauma department without interference. I train nurses and residents the way I was trained. Hard, realistic, no room for ego, and when the Justice Department needs me to testify. She looked at the video screen. I'll tell the truth about Helmand, all of it, no matter who it hurts. The prosecutor nodded. We wouldn't want it any other way, Doctor. General Miller stood and extended his hand. Welcome back to the fight, Colonel. We missed you. Emma shook his hand firmly. It's good to be back, sir. As the meeting dissolved, young Rains wheeled himself over to Emma. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. When you were operating on me, when everything was going dark, I heard you say something. You said, not today. What did that mean? Emma crouched beside his wheelchair, meeting his eyes. It means that death doesn't get to decide who it takes. I do. And I decided it wasn't taking you. She touched his shoulder gently. Not today. Not on my watch. Rains's eyes glistened. Thank you, Doc Valkyrie. Emma stood, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the door. Havoc fell into step beside her. So what now? He asked. Now. Emma looked at her scarred hands, steady and sure. Now I get to work. There's a trauma department to build and lives to save. And a trial to prepare for, Havoc reminded her. And a trial to win, Emma corrected, because those children in Helmand deserve justice. And I'm the only one who can give it to them. As she walked through the hospital corridors, staff members stopped and stared. But this time, Emma didn't duck her head or hunch her shoulders. She walked tall, her gray-blue eyes clear, the ghost finally laid to rest. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was exactly who she was always meant to be. A surgeon, a soldier, a fighter. And the legend of Valkyrie had only just begun. The end